Hello, friends. Today's subject is all about something near and dear to my heart. It's called toxic empathy. Dun, dun, dun. What does that mean? Why are we talking about it? How has it affected me? How has it probably affected Mariah? Curious? Tune in and listen for more.
Welcome to Heart and Soul, the podcast where we empower and inspire women to lead their best lives, harnessing the power of their hearts and souls. We are Mariah
And Monique.
your hosts and guides on this journey of self-discovery and personal growth.
In each episode, we will dive deep into topics that matter most to you, from self-love and confidence to career development, relationships, and everything in between. We believe that every woman has a unique strength and inner wisdom waiting to be unleashed.
Join us as we cover insightful heart and soul-centered topics and interview incredible women who've overcome challenges, chased their dreams, and found their true purpose. Through all of this, you will discover practical tips, strategies, and real-life stories to help you navigate life's twists and turns.
For whatever season of life you're in, this podcast is your safe space to explore, learn, grow, and possibly even laugh and cry with us. So grab your headphones, maybe your favorite drink, and we'll embark on this transformative journey together.
With heart, I'm Mariah.
And with soul, I'm Monique.
So Monique, I believe this topic came to be because one of your sons told you that he thought you were suffering from toxic empathy.
Yes.
Can you share more about that experience and what he meant by that?
Yes, I was whining
Okay.
to one of my sons, my middle son, Cole, who is a fabulous person and listens to me probably ad nauseum about, life problems, about how just I was struggling because I don't know. I was feeling a certain way because I was having a difficult interaction with someone and it changed my mood and I didn't like that. And I didn't like how I was struggling with holding a boundary and being the person that I knew I needed to be because I could feel the other person's pain.
Oh, that's profound.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he's
okay.
like, yeah, toxic empathy is tough. And I was like, oh, what? What is that? Wait, what? I was like, can I please have your permission to just market the shit out of that?
Toxic empathy is tough. Put it on a t-shirt.
Right? I know. Actually, that's a good idea. Anyways, yes. So I decided to do a little bit of a more understanding about what that is. And it happens to be a legit thing.
Okay.
And so I wanted to talk about it because as a person who's sensitive and has been my whole life, and I think you are too, you can pick up on subtleties of people 100%.
Yeah, so interesting you bring that up. I was just listening to a podcast this morning, and it said that 30% of population is likely considered a highly sensitive person, HSP. That's the thing now. HSP, highly sensitive person.
Wow.
And of that,
Yes.
a percentage, I want to say it's 4%. So it's pretty low.
Okay.
Is an actual empath.
Ah, okay.
So, which is, at a very profound level of feeling other people's feelings, right? But highly sensitive people, 30% of the population, that's a lot of us.
That is a lot.
Are picking up on a lot of what's going on. So very timely that I could just spit out those stats.
HSP or whatever.
But it was another podcast that I listen to regularly. We Can Do Hard Things with Glennon Doyle and Abby Wambach. And they were interviewing Alanis Morissette. So that's a great one. Go find that one. But really perfect for this conversation is that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely think I have characteristics of a highly sensitive person.
You definitely do, in my opinion. I've observed it firsthand.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, you're a softie. You're a sweetheart. So what is empathy? I wanted to look up the meaning of that. It's the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. Now, we're not talking about empaths. We're talking about empathy.
Yeah.
Right.
Different things.
Yes. So probably these highly sensitive people probably fit into these people who have empathy. Empathy is typically a quality that people want to have.
Sure.
But so I guess when we're talking about it, like toxic empathy, we're talking about it in like a negative context. So, and why and how can it possibly be if most people want to be more empathetic to other people's suffering and pain and, like, oh, I can really understand that. How could it possibly be toxic, right?
Well, I could see it goes too far. If it goes too far beyond the boundaries of what is healthy for you, that sounds like it's broaching on toxic.
As ding, ding, ding. That's why I had the conversation with my son. I was probably just like, oversharing some things. And, he was like, toxic empathy. I mean, are you having toxic empathy? Right. So I do feel that what toxic empathy is when we start actually absorbing people's like feelings and maybe we start feeling them ourselves. So from what I've read, we have mirroring cells. Have you heard this? I think I watched some sort of series or read something a while ago that science has proven that we have mirroring neurons or cells or something. Totally probably getting that wrong. Meaning these mirroring things allow us to see what other people are doing or feel or experience what other people are doing and mirror them and take them on as our own. People who have more empathy or maybe who are empathic can mirror better. But that can be tough. Like your friend, someone comes to you and they're just like literally having a really tough spot and you're sensing it, you're feeling it, maybe you're picking it up. That's not good for you. You're not staying grounded. You're not staying balanced. All of a sudden you're like, yeah, we should get pissed, Yeah. Those are the mirroring neurons, apparently.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, this is way deeper within us than we have really any control over in the grand scheme of things. However, being aware of it, we can do something about it becoming toxic. Because like you said, we want to be empathetic. We teach empathy. We want our children to be empathetic. Like it can be a buzzword at times, but by no means is a trait that we're not trying to cultivate.
Right.
But if you're mirroring it or you're going so deep into another person's feelings, it crosses a boundary.
Absolutely. Yes. It becomes unhealthy for you when you start taking on the other people's feelings and don't stay true to your own feelings.
And your own lived experience.
Yes.
Because you don't need to be going down the path of being devastated about a breakup if you've not just been broken up with.
Exactly.
That's not healthy for your own
life
processing.
Yes. Right.
I feel this is very common in teenagers.
Oh,
I don't know. It just like occurred to me. And also the mirroring thing. Like think about like as you're growing up and you're learning social connections and you're learning how to interact with others. There's so much you see in like figuring out who you are by mirroring other people and taking on like, slang, right? Like even just like the way people talk, the phrases that they use, the way that they dress, like so much of our culture is around like this mirroring concept. So that's interesting. That's on like a physical level. When we're talking about on an emotional level.
But physiologically we're hardwired by this. And I think whatever show I watched or whatever, it was about how people learn is through these mirroring neurons or cells.
That makes sense. That's how babies learn.
Right, exactly.
Right?
That's exactly it. Because otherwise we'd come here and we wouldn't know. I mean, we just need to be shown and then we need to replicate, right?
Yep.
So yes, they're for a purpose. Empathy is for a purpose.
Yeah.
But when without boundaries or at abandon or when it just is not healthy for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so in your experience, having had to do a deep dive on this topic for your own benefit, what are some antidotes to empathy becoming toxic? How can you stop that cycle?
Yeah, so boundaries is first and foremost. the thing. Boundaries with yourself, probably, and boundaries with other people. Yourself, as far as, I'm noticing myself doing the thing, taking on the emotions. Maybe I need to take a pause. I need to maybe step away from this conversation and reground myself in who I am.
Are there some people that you think just the way that your connection occurs particularly takes you into a toxic place? Like, are there some relationships that you maybe need to create a boundary around because the minute you're in their orbit, you fall into their toxicity?
Yeah. I mean, I am not by any means like trained in psychology, right? But I would guess that these are the people that you're closest to, right?
Sure.
Who are the people that trigger you the most?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep. They're the ones that trigger me the most, like the people that I spend all my time with, that I show my heart to, my sensitivities, and they have the ability to crush them. So I would guess that, or maybe someone who reminds you of people who in your past held like a powerful position over you. A lot of times, like when I have coaching clients come to me, it's the similarities, right? Of maybe like somebody from their work is triggering them, and it's creating like a pattern in them or a way of thinking that they just know is unhealthy, and they can't figure out, why is this person bothering me? But maybe they are very similar to someone from their early childhood or their past that they had a difficult time with, that they never made resolution around. Whatever. Like I said, I'm not into therapy at all, but like I can identify limiting.
You're not anti-therapy, but you're not trying to.
No, I'm not trying to therapize, but I'm trying to say I can identify patterns.
Yeah, of course.
Right. That's what we do as life coaches. So I think that, back to what you were saying, I think that people who are close to us, empathy, because we care and we love and we want them to be happy.
Yeah.
So I do think that toxic empathy can come into play there, right? Like we can kind of like, whoa, I just forgot who I was for a minute there. Like I was so absorbed into your story and I was so on your side, like, but did you think about this, right?
That makes me think of a time when I lived away from home for a long time, and then I came back and I was actually living under the roof with my parents. And all of a sudden my husband was like, I don't even know who you are anymore.
Interesting.
I'm imagining that you are who you were when you were 18.
Wow.
Because I reverted back to that personality.
Like the patterns.
And those patterns.
Yes.
And that relationship. And then it took my awareness and boundaries to be like, wait a minute, no, I am a 30-year-old woman who has lived on her own for a long time. I can feed myself, right?
I don't need my parents to cook for me.
And then all of a sudden, relationships improved all around. And so it's showing that it's not healthy on either side.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? To lose yourself in the empathy, reverting back. So that, that's a whole other topic we could go down.
For sure.
But it reminded me when you were talking about that, of like the people that are closest to you, you could let them in more and your empathy could become more toxic because of just purely your relationship, your love,
all of
you're
it.
Probably not getting, maybe you're getting in a toxic empathy situation with somebody you meet on the street. That would actually probably be an example of something particularly problematic because you're now over-investing when you don't even have a relationship with someone. But I could see that happening too. Yeah.
As an empathetic person, think about someone walking on the street. They have needs, and maybe is it your responsibility? I mean, that's just a huge debate, right? But how far do you take your empathy? Do you take them into your home? Most of us have boundaries, but some people don't.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. That's exactly the boundary.
Yes.
Right? Like, what's too much or what's enough help, but or maybe you need to find someone else to intervene.
Yeah. And when we're talking about this, I just can't help but think about how having boundaries, and we'll talk about boundaries in a later episode, right?
Yep.
But thinking about like, okay, this scenario of maybe you're meeting someone on the street and you decide to bring them home. Okay. I know there's a lot of schools of thought about this. And so I am by no means authority in homelessness or any of that. But I don't know how far we're helping them with their lessons in life. Mm-hmm. So I do feel like toxic empathy taking on other people's emotions, helping them to the degree where it's maybe like compromising ourselves or our own boundaries, is it truly helping? I mean, I think there's a helping and then there's a handout. I really believe in helping. We can just leave that one
leave it
there.
at that.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good way to kind of delineate empathy and toxic empathy, because you're kind of going past the boundary of what is good for you isn't necessarily good for them either.
Yes. So the other thing that I wanted to chat about with toxic empathy was really this, what I struggle with. I have had a difficult interaction with someone and I know I need to say something.
Okay.
But what I'm going to say could possibly hurt them.
Okay.
Now they've maybe challenged me, maybe they've hurt me, right? And I need to say something back. Like, hey, that's enough. But I can feel myself wanting to say more and I stop myself because of this empathy, right? So then maybe the person goes on, they don't stop whatever they're saying. And I don't know if you've ever met someone like this, but they don't necessarily respect someone unless they stand up for themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you don't stand up for yourself because you can kind of sense and feel like, if I stand up for myself, we're going there. We're going all the way and I'm going to bring them down and I'm going to show them the parts of themselves they do not like. But my toxic empathy, my empathy stops me because I'm like, oh, don't do that. Don't go there. Even though that's what they're dishing out to me. So I find this really interesting. Well, I find it like part of my day-to-day life, but also interesting, like thinking about this as far as how do you deal with this, right? Someone's coming at you. You want to say all the things. You stop yourself because you're like tenderhearted. I don't know.
So I guess I'm trying to sort out, you're kind of asking, would it be better to not stop yourself?
Right.
Or are you better to stop yourself?
Right.
I think that could go either way.
I know, right?
Yeah, and the reason that you're stopping yourself is because you're empathetic.
You can feel what the other person's pain. You know, there's this saying, hurt people.
Yeah.
Right? So you can kind of feel the underlying thing and you don't want to add to it. You know, like for my yoga training, one of our tenets is like, do no harm. Yeah. You know, and you don't want to do harm to yourself. Yeah. But toxic empathy sort of doesn't, sometimes it minimizes the self.
Well, I guess my personal mantra in that case would be, when they go low, we go high.
Yeah.
I don't think you can ever go wrong with that.
Okay.
So that's my simple
problem
answer.
Solved.
Yeah. Well, check. No, I mean, of course it's more complicated than that.
Yeah.
Every interaction is different, but at the end of the day, engaging in any, in conflict
low
like
brow.
that,
right.
I don't know. I think there's probably a better way to
I agree.
solve what's between you.
Yes. But also, right? Like, yes, I do believe in going high. I mean, I'll be honest, there's times we're going to the gutter. Right?
Yeah, which is different than standing up for yourself. Yeah, of course, stand up for yourself, but you can do it in a way that doesn't have to meet at their level.
I do feel that sometimes toxic empathy gets in the way of even doing the minimum of standing up for yourself.
That's a good point.
Right? Mm-hmm. Because you can sense and feel.
I'm thinking about something.
Personal experience day.
Well, I think it leads to consensus.
Oh, okay. Share more.
Well, just as you were saying that, it made me think about how often people... So compromise isn't a bad thing. Consensus isn't a bad thing.
Absolutely.
Well, we're just like covering all kinds of controversial topics today. But consensus can happen at the cost of progress or at the cost of doing something hard when hard needs to be done.
Yes.
And just kicking the ball down the field.
Yes.
And I think that can, because you have a group of people in the room And if toxic empathy takes over and nobody can push some buttons to move forward and get through something that's hard, you're going to have consensus and you're going to kick the ball down the field. Right. And I see that here, hearkening back to my political science days, like I see that, as a positive and a negative in political constructs, municipal government for sure. But it's at a cost. Everything is at a cost, right? So, but I think maybe we're getting a little off like what toxic empathy looks like. But they're all interconnected.
They kind of are. And I do feel like, okay, so we live in an area where people are a little bit more stoic here. They're not as expressive. And they also, Minnesota nice. We live in Minnesota. And it's
Minnesota
coined.
Ice, I like to say.
Well, yes, it's true.
Yeah.
But do you'll go through a whole meeting and you'll walk out and you'll be like, well, nothing was accomplished because no one wanted to say the elephant in the room.
That's exactly what I was just describing.
Yes.
Like nothing got done because nobody was willing to hurt anybody's feelings.
Exactly. Toxic empathy. But is it?
Sometimes you need to hurt people's feelings to really get to the root problem.
Yes.
And push through to a solution. And that is probably a toxic situation that's happening in rooms where you don't have somebody willing to step up and push some buttons.
Yeah. And be willing to maybe to stand up, like you were saying, but also like they're going to take the charge, and it doesn't matter if people do or don't like them. They're okay saying the thing, right? And most people are going to be like, thank God they were, they approached the subject.
We were all thinking about it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But they're the one. They're the person who stands up and says, okay, enough.
Yeah.
Enough.
Do you find yourself being that person in the room?
I try to read the room.
Yeah.
Like you can't give information before people can actually, like, you can't force feed people things they cannot take.
Oh, that's so good.
It's like, I'm not hungry. Okay, well, eat this meatloaf sandwich. And then they throw up on you and they're like, well, I told you I wasn't hungry.
Yeah.
Like that literally has happened to me. They just, they kind of break apart.
Much.
Yeah, it's too much. It's too much. You don't want to blow up the construct of their matrix of their mind.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of like bite size. Here's a little nibble.
Yeah.
Here's a little nibble.
I think that's true reading the room. Like, when it's time, and I have no problem being that person when I know that it's time. And like, I'm happy to be able to just dive in and like
say the thing
that everyone in the room is thinking. And then you get a big relief and maybe you push forward to the next thing. So busting up that toxic empathy can be done. So kind of like coming back to the beginning of this conversation, how does somebody identify if they're suffering from this?
Yes.
And then like, just to wrap up, like what are some quick things they could do to check themselves at like how to not
get there,
be suffering from
this?
Right.
I do think if they're noticing that like they're feeling drained from conversations, they're starting to mirror what people are bringing to them.
Yeah.
Maybe they have a negative friend. And, I don't know that everyone is always negative. I think people life is phases, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you have someone, like you were saying, going through a really bad breakup and you're like, holy crap, they're a lot, right? I've been there. I was the person in the breakup, and it's when you leave and you're like, okay, it's fine. I'm worried about them, but I'm like, now all of a sudden I'm going home and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a divorce, like.
Well, yeah, you're mirroring, you're taking on those emotions.
Right. So those boundaries, when you notice that for yourself, someone else's story starts becoming your story. So when you're noticing that, so just taking a pause, as I mentioned, connecting with yourself, reminding yourself where you are, who you are, grounding yourself. By that, I mean either sitting and just touching your emotions. This is who I am. This is how I feel. This is what's going on with me. And what was the other question you asked? I can't remember.
Oh, yeah. So that's great. How to identify that you're in this, and then what can you do? You sort of answered it.
Okay,
like
good.
Grounding in your own emotions, in your own reality,
in your own body,
and watching for this in other people that you know. Again, watching for this in your teenagers, or
oh my goodness,
your whoever it is, like suddenly going, is this you dealing with this, or is your friends dealing with this? And helping them figure out like what is your reality, what are your emotions, and how can you identify people that are dragging you into this toxic place, or that you're just dragging yourself there because it may not even be that other person's fault at all.
No, it's probably not their fault.
Yeah.
It's just a side effect of being empathetic without boundaries around what to do with your empathy, right? Like we all are like, well, I mean, you can't lock yourself in the house all day because like you're afraid you're going to absorb other people's feelings.
Yeah.
You know, the one thing we have in autonomy is our body, right? That's the one thing we have.
Absolutely.
Right? I sort of believe that our spirits are kind of, this thought or idea, like we have a collective understanding. We have the collective mind, collective consciousness, but our bodies, even though they're really from the earth, they're kind of like ours, right? So you can be in your body, movement, exercise, just connecting with what's going on, feeling and sensing, and giving yourself a little bit of a pause and a moment to be you, and just kind of like, okay, that's right. I'm not going through the breakup. I'm not, you don't have to take that on. So
I love it. Being in your body, connecting with your own emotions, and shutting down the empathy that has crossed that boundary from beautiful and something we want to something that is toxic and bringing you down.
Yes, because please hear me. I also believe empathy is necessary. If only 30% of people struggle with empathy, we need higher stats than that.
Right? We need that number to go up to be more highly sensitive people.
Bullies. We need sensitive. Yes. Heart and soul-filled people.
I love it. Oh, well, this has been an interesting conversation. I love that we can just bounce this back and forth and cover a whole gamut from just the whole range here. Yeah. And I hope this has triggered for people listening a lot of thoughts about themselves, about their relationships, maybe people they know that this sounds familiar, and that they can take away some strategies that they can implement or they can help somebody else with. So thanks for bringing this topic to us. Yes. And I'm glad that it came out of your own lived experience.
Yes.
Cheers, friends. You've just finished another episode of the Heart and Soul podcast. We hope that you've enjoyed the show, and if you've loved it, we would love if you'd leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening. You can find links to leave that review in the show notes, where you'll also find other resources that we reference on our show. And if you think a friend could find value in today's episode or any future episodes, please share this episode with them on social media. This is one of the only ways the podcast can organically grow, and we just can't wait to connect with you and all of your besties. You can also find Monique and I on our many social media platforms or our websites, and we're going to leave links to those in the show notes as well. Thank you for listening. We look forward to sharing our hearts and souls with you again next time. With Heart, I'm Mariah.
And with Soul, I'm Monique.